Good morning. It is 6:33 a.m. on Wednesday, July 5th, 2017. Lynn is chewing on some cellophane, just to not make noise. Um, look at this little dog. How are you doing, little dog? Feeling okay for now? Yeah? Yeah. Last night was not great in terms of the fireworks, just because, she needed to go out, but she was scared of the fireworks, so she didn't want to go out. So she had an accident in the stairwell. She seems like she's okay now. She was actually reluctant to go out this morning, too. I had to kind of coax her a bit more than usual. But once she was out and like, oh, okay, it's fine now. So, good. I realized something yesterday, unrelated to any of that, that I think a little bit of my need to process more on Baby Driver. Gosh, I'm conflating a whole bunch of things right now. But so Baby Driver, I think part of what left me feeling like I hadn't fully absorbed it was I definitely got in my head a little bit about the fact that the main character has some superficial similarities to the main character from a novel that I wrote a third of like years and years ago. And then I never finished that one because I just, like, I liked the character and the concept, but I didn't have an act 3, so to speak. I got to what act 2 would be, but then I was just thinking, I don't know where I can go with it, and I never came up with anything, and so that's why I never finished it. But it was basically a character that, for a variety of reasons that are not important to get into, she had kind of a neurological condition where she had to be listening to music or else she became overstimulated by, like, fixated on details. And so essentially, like, in order to kind of maintain continuity of thought and functionality in the world, she kind of needed to be listening to music all the time. And so I think just that superficial similarity, I mean, the rest of the story was very different. But that level of similarity got me in my head a little bit, because there's a little bit of like, oh man, see, now if I ever finished this novel that I haven't thought about in years, then people might think that I got the idea of the character from this, but I didn't really, because I actually wrote it 7 years ago and then never finished it. So there's a little bit of both emotions that you just saw there on display. One was the legitimate jealousy, and then the other one was the self-recrimination about how stupid that jealousy is. Anyway, that's a good combination, by the way. I recommend it. So I think that that maybe got me in my head a little bit while I was watching it, and that may have contributed to why I felt like I didn't fully absorb it. Also yesterday, I made jalapeno poppers for the first time. This is jalapenos harvested from my arrow garden, and I had a recipe that I got as one of the little supplemental recipes from Blue Apron, and I decided to try to make it, and it was not entirely a disaster. For one, just of all of the various different cooking techniques that I have learned over the years, the one that still kind of eludes me is breading things. Just because I feel like inevitably what happens is that I have huge globs of stuck, gross batter all over my fingers, and that when I try to move the stuff around in the breading, it gets coated, but then every time, like, my finger touches it, it's like it just slides off again, and so I end up with these big streaks that have nothing on it, and everything ends up looking messy. And I'm sure that's a practice thing. If I just practiced a lot more, I would get better at it, but no breading experience has ever been satisfying from my end. Now, that said, I've also never fried anything before, and I don't have a deep fryer or anything. This was just This was just a pot with oil in it. But I fried them, and that part actually went pretty well. And the resulting jalapeno poppers, although being a little bit ugly, there's actually a picture in my Twitter feed if you guys care. A little bit ugly in the sense that they had, big parts where there hadn't been any breading, for example. But what I also, and they were pretty tasty, honestly. But what I also discovered is that I had heard that jalapeno peppers they tend to be more spicy when they're smaller, and then as they get bigger and ripen more and more, they get less and less spicy. And I suspect that's borne out because a couple of the ones that I harvested to make this recipe were still pretty small, or on the small end of what the recipe requested, which was 3-inch. In fact, actually, I think 2 of them were probably, maybe more like 2 to 2.5 inches. And those ones, really, really spicy. I mean, I'm not like huge into, super spicy things, but I can get by. And jalapenos I usually don't think of as so spicy that I have a problem with, but those little ones, yikes. I was putting, like, smearing spoonfuls of straight cream cheese on my tongue, trying to get that out of my mouth. I mean, the flavor was still good, but just the pepper ended up really spicy, more than I expected. I think probably the next time I make things from jalapenos growing in my arrow garden, I will wait until they're bigger. Anyway, though, it was kind of a successful endeavor of making something that I had never made before. And it was a little bit ugly, but worked. So, the other thing that I still have to figure out is what I'm doing with Luna's treatment, but I'm still, I'm still processing that because, yeah. Anyway, no decision made on that front yet. So, anyway, I've got to get ready for work, so I will talk to you guys tomorrow for 5 more minutes.